Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Susan McGuire of ACCE, and I want to welcome you all to this afternoon's webinar. We have a distinguished panel here today for the final in our From the Winner's Circle series of webinars on Chamber of the Year award-winning programs. Our presenters this afternoon are going to share information on Tulsa's Future, a 20-county regional economic development partnership led by the Tulsa Regional Chamber, and specifically how tribal nations have become integral partners in this effort and active and key participants in all phases of the region's most historic economic development projects. We're honored to have here with us today the Honorable Chuck Hoskin, Jr., Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation. We also have Mike Neal, President and CEO of the Tulsa Regional Chamber, and Justin McLaughlin, the Chamber's Executive Vice President and COO, to lead today's discussion. We're also delighted to have here with us the sponsor of ACCE's Chamber of the Year program, MemberClicks, Mark Edgley of MemberClicks. Mark's going to be providing some introductory remarks, and I will turn the program over to him after I review a few housekeeping matters. So first, as usual, attendees are in listen-only mode to avoid background noise. Second, after the presentation, we will have time for questions, and you can ask those questions through the question box in the lower right-hand corner of the webinar panel. So when a question comes to you during the presentation, please go ahead, put that in the question box, and I will ask all of those questions to our panelists after their presentation. The presentation slides are uploaded to the webinar panel as well. You can click and download them right now. You can also wait until I post a recording of the webinar, which will be by tomorrow or at the latest Monday, May 17th. So with that, I'm going to turn the program over to Mark Edgley, who's President and CEO of MemberClicks. We're grateful to you for your generous sponsorship of the ACCE Chamber of the Year program, Mark, and I'm going to pass things over to you now.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Susan. And I appreciate being presented the opportunity to chat with folks before you guys dive into the very interesting session that Mike and Justin and Chief have going for us. So MemberClicks, you know, our mission is really simple: to empower member-based organizations to thrive through refreshing technology and a heart for service. And, you know, candidly, our desire is to do that every day for folks like you. We serve over 700 chambers across America, and we do that in a lot of different ways. If you want to go to the next slide, Jim. You know, we look for ways to simplify your life through technology, right? And we do that through lots of different products: your membership management system, learning management systems, online communities, event registration, all the good stuff that goes along with operating a chamber. And our desire to do that is to make it as easy as humanly possible for the staff of the chamber to accomplish their tasks so that they can focus on your mission. And your mission is a critical one. And now more than ever, with kind of the post-pandemic experience that we're all having now, right? Which is chambers serve an incredibly valuable role to play for small businesses in the recovery that they hope to gain from over the next 12 to 18 months. So we are honored to be part of this process. We're always super excited to engage the Chamber of the Year award winners and everybody who participates. We know how hard you guys work 365 days out of the year, and we want to extend our gratitude and appreciation for that. So ACCE, thanks for putting this on. Mike and Justin, congratulations on being such a successful chamber over the years. And for everybody on the call, I hope you have a great experience and learn a lot today, and know that MemberClicks is cheering for everybody to be successful this year.
Thank you, Mark. Again, appreciate your sponsorship of our award program. So now I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel today. Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin, Jr. was elected to serve as the Principal Chief of the Cherokee Nation, the country's largest tribal government with more than 390,000 tribal citizens in 2019. Prior to being elected Principal Chief, he served as the Cherokee Nation Secretary of State. As Principal Chief, he's increased the minimum wage at Cherokee Nation and Cherokee Nation businesses and secured the largest language investment in the tribe's history to expand Cherokee language education and preservation. Chief Hoskin also appointed the tribe's first delegate to the U.S. Congress, doubled Cherokee Nation's funding for career tech education, and established the Housing, Jobs, and Sustainable Communities Act to repair hundreds of homes for Cherokee elders, as well as public community buildings across the tribe's 14-county jurisdiction. Chief Hoskin graduated from the University of Oklahoma and the University of Oklahoma College of Law and is a member of the Cherokee Nation and Oklahoma Bar Associations. We are honored to have him here with us today. Mike Neal, CCE, is in his 15th year as President and Chief Executive Officer of the Tulsa Regional Chamber, which serves 20 counties in Northeast Oklahoma, and in 2020 was awarded ACCE's Chamber of the Year Award for a record 4th time. Mike serves in leadership capacities at the U.S. Chamber, the International Economic Development Council, IEDC, the Western Association of Chamber Executives, and the State Chamber of Oklahoma. Prior to coming to Tulsa, Mike spent 4 years as President and CEO of the Nashville, Tennessee Area Chamber of Commerce and 12 years as President and CEO of his hometown, Monroe, Louisiana Chamber. Thank you, Mike, for being with us today. And then Justin McLaughlin, CCE, serves as the Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for the Tulsa Chamber. He previously served as Senior Vice President of Economic Development with the Chamber, Foundation President and VP of Government Affairs with the St. John Health System, and had roles with the Boeing Company and the Oklahoma Department of Commerce. Justin is a member of IEDC and serves on the boards of I2E, 36 Degrees North, Salvation Army of Tulsa, Teach for America, and IEDC's Education and Certification Committee. So thank you again, all of you, for being with us today. And at this point, I'm going to pass the presentation over to Mike to get us started.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, ACCE. I'm delighted to be here today live from Commerce, Lexington, the Lexington, Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. I'm sitting at my good friend Bob Quick's desk. Commerce Lexington won this award some 4 or 5 years ago, and Bob's a great colleague and a great friend, and I'm glad he's loaning me his desk for at least a couple hours this afternoon. Sort of as Susan described, our chamber has some 2,200 member organizations. We represent 170,000 workers in this 20-county Northeast Oklahoma region. Our primary driver is of regional and individual prosperity for this Northeast Oklahoma region I referenced. Our chamber develops and delivers a wide variety of programs and services really designed to bolster and benefit our area businesses, really like most of your chambers, of all shapes and sizes, from very large corporations to small startups. For almost 120 years, we've really served as an integral part of what makes the Tulsa region a great place to live, work, play, and visit. We're sort of epitomized by the chamber tagline, your partner in prosperity, in that from a strategic perspective, every single strategy, every program, every service of the chamber is really specifically created to increase prosperity. We've been honored to be the National Chamber of the Year 4 times in the past 15 years. We're on a journey of excellence. We're in pursuit of hopefully one day becoming the first chamber in America to win a Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award, and we're heavily engaged with the Oklahoma Quality Foundation, and 2 years ago received their Award of Commitment to Excellence. We're one of the few chambers that has multiple accreditations. We've got a 5-star accreditation from the U.S. Chamber. We're an accredited economic development organization through IEDC. We're an accredited destination marketing organization through Destinations International. We're also honored to house the Tulsa Office of Film, Music, Arts, and Culture. We call it Tulsa FMAC. It's Oklahoma's only accredited city film commission through the Association of Film Commissioners International. So you might get a sense that we're really focused on accreditation and focused on quality. The last thing I'll say, sort of as an introduction, in this day and age, we're also home to Mosaic. one of the nation's most successful and influential diversity, equity, and inclusion coalitions. Enough about the chamber. Let's go to Chief Hoskin to tell you a little bit about the Cherokee Nation. Chief?
Mike, thank you very much. Good to be with you all. To be the chief of the Cherokee Nation is a great honor and a great opportunity to do something for a great people. I want to take just a moment to tell you about our people. We've been a people together from time immemorial. We have not always been in this part of the world. We were removed to this area in the 1830s under Indian removal. We had had a home in the southeastern part of the United States before there was a United States. Our removal here was before there was a state of Oklahoma, and once here we established a great society. We invested in those things that make a society great, make an economy great, and we were building up the Cherokee Nation to be something great. We invested in a system of justice, a system of democracy, focused on education and focused on commerce. The state of Oklahoma was founded in 1907. Through most of the 20th century, Cherokee Nation did not function much in the way as you would imagine a government functioning in this modern era. It's been since the 1970s that we have been essentially unshackled by the United States and allowed to chart our own destiny again, allowed to exercise sovereignty as any Indian nation should be able to. And what we've done, I think, has been quite remarkable over the decades. Now, if you go back through Cherokee history, and I won't spend too long on a history lesson, but I think this is an important point. If you go back through Cherokee history, you see that there are periods of time in which we have had a relatively great degree of prosperity for our people, strength in our government, strength in our institutions, and strength in our communities. The secret has been certainly our hard work. But the other part of it has been our good sense to reach out to our friends and neighbors. Every one of those periods of our history in which we have thrived, it's because we've had neighbors that we've worked with, that we've thrived together with. And you won't find a better example in Cherokee history than what's going on today. And I'll tell you, the best friend Cherokee Nation has is the Tulsa Chamber. And I can show you and tell you about so many great projects we have worked on. Now, first of all, Cherokee Nation today, largest tribe in the United States, and we have a huge impact on the economy of Northeast Oklahoma. Collectively, we have about 11,000 employees across our government, across our various businesses. We have more than a $2 billion annual economic impact. Now, I get very excited and enthused about the direct employment that we have. But what really excites me is the opportunity to help the private sector create jobs. And what's our role in that? And we play, I think, a strong role in that. We couldn't play the role that we play, though, without good friends like the Tulsa Chamber. So you could go back and look at recruiting Macys, a great employer here in Northeast Oklahoma, Amazon, Sofadale, where there's a tremendous plant that was built just on the edge outside of the Cherokee Nation. Milos Tea. I had the pleasure of being at the grand opening last year for that facility, the Greenheck facility and expansion. The list goes on, but it means thousands of good paying jobs. Our role in that is often helping bring infrastructure to the table. And it's often bringing forward some great resources that we have in recruiting employees for those industries. I think we're very good at it, and we want to bring that expertise and that drive to find the best and brightest for the companies that are recruited to come to Northeast Oklahoma. We want to bring that together with great partners like the Tulsa Chamber. I think that we're often a difference maker, but we couldn't do it alone, and that's the sense of mission that we have today. The sense of mission that we have today is there's so much more we can do together than we can do separately. And that's one of the reasons that it's such an honor and privileged to be chief of the Cherokee Nation at this time in our history, because we're at another point in Cherokee history in which working with friends and neighbors is creating so much prosperity, so much hope. Because remember, when we were removed here, we never wanted to leave. We said this is the last time we will be removed from our home, and this is our new home. So when we recruit a business, it's more than creating jobs and looking at, well, what's this going to do for this year, next year, the year after that. We think in generational terms. We often say, what do our actions today mean for the next 7 generations? Because the Cherokee people have endured so much. This is our home forever. So when we get the opportunity to recruit a business, we really think about what that will do for generations and generations of the Cherokee people, their families, and their friends. You know, there's other things that we're involved in with the chamber. You know, we think that we have a role to advocate for good public policy in the state of Oklahoma and in Washington, D.C. And to be involved in the chamber's One Voice legislative initiative is important. And the great thing about it is it's so collaborative. It's an opportunity to build consensus from the stakeholders in the region around those aspects of public policy we need to advocate for, we need to defend, and we need to advance. And we are glad to contribute to that. You know, one of the big policy issues in Washington, D.C. is tax policy. And that's one of the things that makes this area unique. We have fought for successfully the Indian country tax credits with respect to employment, deducting taxes for Native employees and their families, and accelerated depreciation. That, I think, makes this area uniquely suited for growth. And there's so many other reasons that it's suited for growth, but that's one of them. And so I'm proud that we have that tax advantage and we go to bat for that policy in Washington, D.C. I could go on, but I want you to know that what the chamber does is of such vital importance to the future of the Cherokee Nation. If we didn't have the friendship that we have, and I mean personal friendship in addition to institutional friendship with the Tulsa Chamber and the men and women that run it, I would be pessimistic in some ways about our future because I know we can't go it alone. But I am so optimistic about the future of the Cherokee Nation. The future is bright. It's a future that's built on prosperity. We are going to recruit industry and business to this area because we're working together, and that's going to help the next seven generations of Cherokees and all of our friends and neighbors. So I'll be with you on this panel. Thank you very much, Widow.
Thank you, Chief. I'll go ahead and give a little bit of an overview of our Tulsas Future program, and then we'll walk through some case studies with you. The Chief mentioned just a little bit ago on some of those projects that have been so transformative to our region. So Tulsas Future is a 20-county collaborative regional economic development partnership that's led through the Tulsa Regional Chamber. We work with the city of Tulsa, over 200 private investors, and numerous regional and tribal partners to really further the economic prosperity in our Tulsa region. Since the inception 15 years ago, Tulsa's Future Regional Economic Development has supported the creation of more than 69,000 jobs and more than $3.8 billion in capital investment. I should also say that more than 16,000 of those jobs and more than $1.9 billion of capital investment has come since the last phase of the 5-year campaign that began in 2016. So we've seen a lot of capital investment occur just over the last 5 years and good job growth as well. But through dedicated outreach, the tribal nations have become integral partners with Tulsa's Future, and you heard the Chief mention that. You know, we believe, pursuant to the Horizon Initiative of really resource alignment, Northeast Oklahoma's tribal partners have become and been an active and key participant in all phases of our economic development and some of the large historic projects that we've been able to work. Tribal participation from the initial proposal to post-groundbreaking talent recruitment have really given us a competitive advantage among peer economic development organizations nationwide. Our regional partners are crucial to the Tulsa Regional Chamber's mission of increasing economic prosperity in Northeast Oklahoma. Our region is home to 3 of the largest and most prosperous and wealthiest tribal nations in the country, the Cherokee Nation, the Muskogee Nation, the Osage Nation, that each have invested in the Tulsa Future program since its second phase. I should also note, and thank you to the Chief, that the Cherokee Nation has been a major founding leader since the inception of this program. Given the large geographic footprint, the number of citizens, and the economic impact, tribal governments have become really essential stakeholders in the Chamber's mission. The tribes partner with the Chamber to increase economic opportunity for their citizens and drive capital investment within their reservations borders. The Chamber worked with an economic development consulting firm to refine the Tulsa's Future 3 strategy over a 2-year period. And this research really yielded some inclusive insight with a community survey and stakeholder interviews. It was then used to determine the Tulsa Future 3 goals, strategies, and funding needs. In order to ensure that we have the most competitive asset map and incentive toolbox to attract corporate investment, our consultant really encouraged us to engage in more robust regional partnership model, which included further integration with tribal governments for Tulsa Future 3. Each of the tribes pledged more than $75,000 a year of investment for Tulsa Future 3, which grants them a seat on the program's oversight committee. Committee meetings provide regular opportunities for meaningful engagement between tribal and chamber leadership. And I'd now like to pivot to discussing, and Mike and I will discuss, along with the chief, some of the successful case studies and how this tribal partnership has really helped us recruit some companies. The first case study I'd like to talk about was when we were able to recruit the Macys Order Fulfillment Center in 2015. We were able to lead the attraction of a $180 million facility that would ultimately employ, North Tulsa County, that would ultimately employ 5,800 full and part-time and seasonal employees. Northeast Oklahoma made the short list of candidates for this site for a 2 million square foot facility, but the Macys selection consultant said the chamber needed to further augment its incentives. As the Tulsa area site was within the Cherokee Reservation boundaries, project partners approached the tribe about direct aid. The nation, which had supported Tulsa's Future as a private investor, saw the participation as a chance to secure jobs for tribal citizens. And I think one of the comments that was made at the time by the chief was, we don't necessarily have to own the business, but we can invest in those businesses that provide opportunities for our citizens. So contributing a cash incentive and then also in-kind workforce services. And I have to say how important that is to provide those in-kind workforce services, to provide a pipeline of Cherokees qualified to be able to work at the facility, that we were able to recruit that. So the success of the project at the time was the largest in Tulsa's Future history, and the first to directly involve the tribe helped us really establish a model for future tribal involvement in development projects. The then Cherokee Chief Bill John Baker frequently touted the project's success as the benefits to the Cherokee Nation. All three tribes continue their investment at the Oversight Committee level in Tulsa's Future and remain essential economic development partners for the Chamber. Chief, do you have any other thoughts you wanted to mention in regards to the Macys project?
Chief, I think you're muted.
All right, the Macys project was one of our first big projects I think we were involved in. And all I'll say about that is the tremendous impact it's made on Cherokee families. There are a lot of Cherokees that work there. Now, it's an equal opportunity employer, but we're good at recruiting everyone, and we're good at recruiting our own citizens. And the opportunity to get someone in one of these jobs, which pays a tremendous wage, I can tell you personally what a difference it's made in their lives, because I know some of them, and it just makes me feel good, those individual stories. On the grand scale, though, it's just made such an impact on the region. And so it's a great example of the Indian country tax credits at work, but it's really a great example of life-changing opportunities for individuals.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. Appreciate that. I'll now move in and talk a little bit about the Greenheck group that we recruited back in 2018. This is a Wisconsin-based manufacturer of air control equipment. Completed phase 1 of its Tulsa campus, which is with about $100 million in capital investment. This project's significant because as they told us when we recruited them, that our product probably sits on top of your office building. So it's not a product that we as consumers buy, but it's a product that commercial and builders buy. And so it's heating and air, large heating and air equipment that's purchased for large buildings. Their campus now includes 4 100,000 square foot facilities, air conditioned manufacturing, and 1 office building, and they've also got plans to add 3 more plants and a distribution center. Currently, Greenheck employs more than 260 people, with plans to eventually employ 900 to 1,000 people. One of the things we really appreciated about this project as well is they were going to put childcare on site, and we feel like that's so important and just really become a quality employer. This project was a collaboration between the Chamber, the City of Tulsa, and regional partners, including the Cherokee Nation, which again offered workforce assistance services in initial proposal. As the project developed, the Cherokee Nation helped us host site visits, dinners and meetings with company representatives, and ultimately contribute a cash incentive. And I just, again, we'll keep talking about several of these examples, but just how much that really gives us a uniqueness and the appreciation to those companies to have the Cherokee Nation involved was just huge in landing this project. And I don't know if Chief, if you had any comments you wanted to make about interactions with the Greenheck group.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I can tell you, having been at that groundbreaking, that was in my former career working for Chief Baker, who did so much to bring prosperity to the Cherokee Nation. Just being there as a Cherokee Nation representative, I can tell you, they treated the Cherokee Nation with such respect, but it really starts with how the Chamber of Commerce, or the Tulsa Chamber, sets the tone. I mean, honestly, given our history, to be at a time when the nation commands such respect and receives it from the chamber, I can just tell you that it's not personally that I like the pats on the back, it's that it makes me a proud Cherokee when I walk in a room and a company like that is so excited. And I'll never forget how excited the executives were to see representatives of the Cherokee Nation, but the tone starts with the chamber. That's the reason that happened.
Well, Chief and Justin, thank you so much. I had the opportunity, Chief Hoskin, to talk to Chief Baker last night, and he said, I told him what a great job you were doing and what a great transition it was over the last couple of years between you and him. And he said, well, I got to tell you, Mike, I don't miss all those phone calls from you about once a month asking for money to recruit some new company to town. He said it was fun, had a great time doing it, but thanks for not calling me all the time. I'm glad you got Chief Hoskin on speed dial now. But he's been a great partner, just as you have in the Cherokee Nation, and this phenomenal success. The next project we'll touch on is a company called Sofidel. Also in 2018, Tulsas Future announced one of the largest ever capital investments in Northeast Oklahoma. Sofidel is an Italian tissue paper manufacturer, and probably not until COVID last year did we really value toilet tissue and see what a huge benefit it was to our communities. But Sofidel broke ground on a $360 million, 1.8 million square foot production facility in Inola, Oklahoma. Inola is a very rural community east of Tulsa. Inola hadn't seen any kind of new building probably in the past 20 or 30 years. But phase 2 of this project is estimated to be an additional 2 million square feet with a $400 million capital investment plus. This project, as Justin referenced on a couple of the previous projects, was really the most collaborative project in our Tulsa's Future history. It involves some 23 regional partners, including the Cherokee Nation. The plant formally opened this past October in the midst of COVID. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have the Italian executives come in to do the formal ribbon cutting, as we had broken ground with them some 2 years previously. But Sofidel currently employs more than 400 people in our region, with that number expected to double during a second phase of operations in the next year or two. Chief, you want to make some comments about this project, as you referenced earlier, that as we began to sit down with your team and look at this project several years ago, we thought it was in the Cherokee Nation, but found out it was just across the borders of the Cherokee Nation in the Muskogee, at the time, Muskogee Creek Nation. So, Chief, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's a great example of two tribes working together with the Tulsa Chamber. It is in the Creek Nation. It's just on the edge. But the Creek Nation and the Cherokee Nation have a long history, and we find common ground on so many things, particularly economic development. So it's a great example of, in this part of the country, you have tribes next to each other that get along, and not to diminish any of the tribe across the country, but frankly, there are places in this country where that's not the case. I can tell you here, though, there's very much a sense of cooperation and collaboration. And I'll tell you, Sofidel, these gentlemen are more expert than I am about why Sofidel would choose this location. But the vast resources that we have, the water resources we have, the really price competitive electricity and other energy resources that we have, on top of what the Indian nations bring to the table, I think those are surely big factors in Sofidel transforming that little town. Now look, that's a little town that the Creeks founded long before there was a state of Oklahoma. The rest of the world might have forgot about Inola, but the Tulsa Chamber didn't forget about Inola. The Creek Nation didn't forget about Inola, and the Cherokee Nation didn't forget about Inola. And that makes me feel good for that community because I know the future's bright.
Yeah, great point, Chief. Extraordinary capital investment in a very rural community, and extraordinary capital investment to come. That transitions to a year later, in 2019. Amazon announced plans to build a fulfillment center in Tulsa after we had recruited and worked with them for probably a year and a half in the process. That 2.5 million square foot fulfillment center is now open near Tulsa International Airport. The state-of-the-art facility was a $130 million investment, and Amazon has hired some 1,500 individuals. At the time, accounting for the largest single new employer in the city of Tulsa history, not in our region, but in the city of Tulsa's history. They have plans today to grow to some 5,000 employees within the current year. So bright future there. The jobs, these 1,500 jobs that I referenced that are there today on site, they support an annual payroll of roughly $50 million. And the Cherokee Nation, once again, joined a coalition of local and state partners to very aggressively recruit Amazon. Just this past week, Amazon announced plans to further enlarge its presence in Tulsa. Tulsa will be the site for a new 270,000 square foot merchandise sorting center that will create at least 200 to 300 full and part-time jobs when it's completed later this year. Once complete, that will make a total of 3 Amazon outlets in our region: the fulfillment center, a delivery station, and now this sorting center. Also, just last month, Tulsa was selected as one of 16 cities in the U.S. To test Amazon's electric delivery vehicles. Chief Hoskin, your thoughts about these various Amazon projects?
Well, here's a good example of a project that's so big and so impactful that it gets the attention of the United States Department of the Interior. So back when the plant, the big plant, was under construction, I was Secretary of State at the time. Chief Baker was the principal chief. The Interior Department, the Interior Secretary, came to see what was going on. Now that's significant because it doesn't matter which administration we're talking about in Washington, D.C. The Department of the Interior has increasingly focused on what they can do in Indian country, and I'm talking about the whole of Cherokee Nation, Creek Nation, the other tribes in the area, Osage Nation, what they can do to spur economic development. And so to get high-ranking leaders to come to the Tulsa area to see this kind of partnership in action, number one, reflects well on the Cherokee Nation and the Tulsa Chamber. But the other thing it does is, as the Interior Department is thinking and getting opportunities, say with new federal funding, to focus on what works and focus on areas where it's working, well, we have their attention. That is good for the future, not just a good reflection at the present time, but it's good for the future. And I think in the coming years, there's going to be opportunities with streams of funding coming out of Washington, D.C., including the Interior Department, that tribes can leverage to this area to make even more wins on top of Amazon. And Mike, the other point I'll make is that during COVID, the First Lady of the Cherokee Nation, January Hoskin, and myself spent so much time on Amazon that I know that business got better just because of the work that we did. So you probably saw a little spike in what happened out of that deal. We'll keep up our end of that, I assure you.
Hey, thanks. Please convey our thanks and appreciation to the First Lady of the Cherokee Nation for her efforts in leading you and me once again.
Well, finally, I'll cover our last project, and I think we could probably go on about other projects, really probably into the afternoon. But in 2019, Cherokee Nation Chamber and others collaborated on bringing a national beverage company, Milos Tea, to the region. Milos has now built a $60 million production facility and distribution center in the Cherokee Industrial Park. And, you know, one of the interesting fun facts about this project was They wanted to make sure that we had a high quality water here in Oklahoma, and so they brought a truck in and trucked an entire truck of water back to Birmingham to make sure and run it through their plant to make sure that we had consistent flavor, and we did. And then we had to get that before we landed the project. But they created 60 new jobs in its first phase of hiring, and they plan to add more than 100 jobs in its next 12 months. Really have a great corporate culture as a company. Milos CEO, Patricia Walwork, credited the Cherokee Nation's involvement being key to the decision-making process. Chief, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments about Milos as one of our more recent projects. Actually, that announced we had the groundbreaking during COVID and ribbon cutting.
We did. We played it safe, but we had a great groundbreaking, and once again, it's been great for Cherokee Nation to be a part of that. After that event, you talk about the corporate culture, I visited with the plant manager, a young man who started, I think, working at a very entry-level job with Milos, and now he is over that plant, and that was such a great success story. I mean, he talked a lot about his life. You know, those are the companies we like to recruit, those that feel it's part of their mission to build up their workforce from within, to make sure that people that come in the door at those entry-level jobs have a shot at advancement if they work hard. That's what our career services program likes to do, and we put people in this plant. And my hope for any Cherokee is that they get a shot to enjoy prosperity through hard work. That's what makes Milos a great partner, because they believe in that too. I think they believe in retaining employees for the long haul, doing what they need to do to retain them. Makes it great to work with them. And so when we help recruit companies, that's what we're looking for. But we have to make sure that we can provide a workforce that's trained and ready, willing, and able. That's a key role for Cherokee Nation, is that workforce development. And so I like to share that story about that plant manager with some of the young Cherokees that are going to work at Milos and other places. And we've got their back, and we can have more success stories like that through our work with the Tulsa Chamber. Also, I actually switch. I love sweet tea. I sometimes drink too much of it. I'm not going to name the competitor, but I switched from the competitor to Milos that day because they gave me some free tea that day. That's all it took, Mike. That's all it took.
Yeah, that's good iced tea. My family and I drink the unsweet, the unsweet. I don't know what it's called, but it's the sweet tea, but it's the non-sugar sweet tea, and I love it, Chief. We've got 3 key takeaways that we'd like to cover maybe in the next 5 minutes before we leave time and go to Q&A with Susan from the audience today. But the first key takeaway that I'd like to share with each of you is to, number one, identify unique constituencies in your community. These might be constituencies that within your geography that you might not be currently engaged with, that may not be members of the chamber, or they may be members, but they may not be very heavily involved in what you do. They may not be very heavily involved in the economic development process. I might also suggest that you look at and ask the question, are there shared goals? Are there shared goals such as job creation, job retention, that would benefit these partners in a collaborative effort with you? All 5 projects that Chief Hoskin and Justin and I touched on today received extensive media coverage and media recognition, as you might imagine, which I think the Chief would tell you, and his predecessor, Chief Baker, would tell you, brought phenomenal publicity to the tribal contributions. And I'll say, from a chamber perspective, in recognition of the Cherokee Nation's loyal partnership that you've been hearing Chief Chuck Hoskin Jr. talk about today, our chamber was honored to name them as our regional partner of the year in our 2020 chamber annual meeting, with some 1,500 of our best friends with us. Fortunately, a few months before COVID hit our country.
The second big takeaway for us really is making sure that we are engaging diverse potential partners. In order to maintain successful tribal partnerships, the chamber prioritizes building relationships. We really believe, and the Chief talked about that relationships are so important in this business. We cannot do economic development by ourselves. It takes many, many entities to land a project. And I think having really good relationships before the project and the prospect comes to town is so important to being able to land those projects. In addition to their leadership at Tulsa's Future, all three tribes, principal chiefs serve on our board of directors. And we've maintained and made sure that that's very important to keep their representation on our board. This combination of service and participation provides consistent opportunities for dialogue and collaboration between tribal leadership and chamber leadership. As future potential economic development projects are identified and reviewed, attention is paid to those projects that may provide significant value to one of the tribes. Early and consistent involvement of the tribes has proven key in securing a number of high-profile economic development projects for the region.
Now, the third takeaway I'd like to share with you is to establish meaningful metrics of success. This is really important to your investors. It's really important to elected officials. It's really important to the public and probably the media as well. But in Tulsa Future, we have two primary metrics. Number one, job creation, and number two, capital investment. Likewise, we target key industries such as advanced manufacturing, aerospace and defense, and energy, as well as high growth opportunities that leverage technology and innovation. Right now, we have a heavy focus on electric vehicle manufacturing. But as mentioned previously by Justin, since its inception some 15 years ago, Tulsa's Future has helped support the creation of nearly 70,000 jobs and nearly $4 billion in capital investment. And I'm not referring to another $4.5 billion in capital investment that's occurred in the Cherokee Nation with one of our great regional partners, the Mid-America Industrial Park with Google. Google's invested $4.5 billion and created some 800 jobs and another 2,200 construction jobs in the Cherokee Nation in the Northeast Oklahoma region. Currently, Tulsa's Future is working on a one-year plan. We call it the Road to Recovery. It will pave the way for continued job growth during the next 5-year plan, which will begin in 2022. Road to Recovery features a renewed focus during COVID on business retention, expansion, and attraction efforts. It's kind of what we refer to as a back to the basics plan. But Justin and I were delighted some 2 weeks ago that our volunteer leadership and staff wrapped up a very successful fundraising campaign, which raised more than $3 million to fund this new one-year initiative. And as you might expect, the Cherokee Nation is a really valued investor in this Road to Recovery program. Chief, any thoughts from our 3 takeaways today?
Well, you know, the first two speak to just the nature of the relationship between the Cherokee Nation and Tulsa Chamber. You know, Cherokee Nation, our focus is to generate a lot of revenue through our businesses, but to reinvest 100% of that into our communities, into our people. We do that in a variety of ways, and we have a variety of interest from our government programs to building up our own businesses. We have a sense that part of our mission is to build up the economies and the communities that are within our Cherokee Nation, and that includes a good part of Tulsa. But, you know, being engaged by the Tulsa Chamber, I think we're talking years ago, before I was really involved, that helped us sharpen our focus. Tulsa Chamber, which has such experience, and we saw the awards that they've won over the years, it's helped us sharpen our focus on what we should do. We aren't necessarily the experts on economic development. We have a sense that it needs to be done, and we have resources to help do it. So engaging the Cherokee Nation and keeping us engaged in our place in leadership on the Chamber has allowed us to stay involved. And again, we could do a lot with the dollars that we have, but I think some of the best dollars we spend are in projects to recruit businesses with the guidance of the Tulsa Chamber. Now, without that partnership, we'd still spend those dollars. I'm not sure we would spend them as well. I'm not sure we would have the focus that we should have. but we're doing great things together. And, you know, the last point, the third point on metrics is important. As Chief of the Cherokee Nation, myself and other elected officials, including our legislative branch, are responsible for the resources of the Cherokee Nation. The Cherokee people have high expectations from their government. You know, we've got one of the most, I think, incredible healthcare systems around. We have a focus on housing. We invest in education. It's a lot of different things we do. When we tell the Cherokee people that it makes sense to put money into roads in the Tulsa metro area, into water projects, into direct funding to help bring in a company, we're held accountable for whether that was a good investment. And in some cases, you know, it takes some explaining about the larger vision of what it means to bring in a company in, say, Owasso, when we're talking to people in other parts of the Cherokee Nation. But having results and being able to point to the numbers makes a big difference. Being able to go into something and say, this is what we want to achieve in terms of job growth, that makes a difference in selling these plans and reassuring people that this was the right investment. And as we're on this road to recovery, we know we've got a lot of work to do. But again, having this experienced institution in the Tulsa Chamber and us being able to pitch in, it gives me a lot of confidence as chief that we're going to meet these ambitious numbers that we have. And I can in turn, hopefully, if I do my job, instill that confidence in the Cherokee people. So Mike, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chief. Susan, let's go back to you.
Well, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation and great stories of collaboration and success. I really appreciate it. And folks, now if you would like to ask any questions of Justin, Mike, or the Chief, please go ahead and type them into the question box on the right-hand side of your webinar panel, and I will go ahead and ask them. We have a few minutes for questions. While we're waiting, just a reminder that we are recording the webinar and it will be available tomorrow, excuse me, on our website along with the presentation slides. Also, if you have further questions or want to connect with one of our presenters, we have their contact information on the slide in front of us. So go ahead and type your questions in. I don't see any so far. But Justin, or Mike, just a question to sort of get started in my mind is if a chamber is looking to get started on these efforts of collaboration and in terms of regional economic growth, what would be a good first step in identifying unique constituencies or communities that to collaborate? Where would you get started? What's a good first step to get started?
I'll take the first stab. Justin can add to it. I think number one, you need to bring the parties together. I think one of the things that I think as Chief Hoskin's described, one of the things that we as a region have really done well together is that we formed a public-private partnership. We brought together city government, county government, state government, tribal government, the federal government. We brought together the private sector. In our case, we brought together all these municipal and county leaders from across a very wide region. We started out when this program began 16 years ago, it had a single focus on Tulsa and Tulsa County. It gradually grew to 12 counties, to 16 counties, to 20 counties. So you got to walk, Susan, before you run. You can't try to get too sophisticated. The main thing is just getting people at the table together, beginning to have dialogue around what are the needs, what do we need, what do we aspire to do, what would we love to do one time, and what are some meaningful changes that if we all came together, got our act together, that if we could accomplish some of these big, hairy, audacious goals, what would they be? Justin, your chief, want to add to that?
Yeah, I might just add. I mean, to me, I think you'd ask just a simple way, and I think it's starting with have a meal with somebody that maybe you don't know that you want to collaborate with, and really starting off that relationship. Something as simple as that. But I think really looking for, we work hard to make our businesses and the entities in our region important, and I think it's I think it really is in a genuine way, prioritizing, making those relationships important, and then fostering those relationships. I mean, we're very strategic in our office about making sure that we're meeting with and touching base with people. And that doesn't just happen by accident. It's something that we have to make sure we schedule in time. And so for us, waiting for, not talking to somebody for 3 years and then calling them asking for help, that's not always the best way to do things. So we want to make sure that we maintain those relationships, and we're there to help them as well. I mean, I think it goes both ways, but making sure that we're constantly in contact with our partners.
Just briefly, I'll tell you, when it comes to Tulsa Chamber, the meaningful and frequent engagement means a great deal to the Cherokee Nation. I'm sure it does to their other partners, other stakeholders as well. And it's really on a personal level. I think that makes a difference. And the other thing is the Tulsa Chamber shows such great respect to our culture. And I think that's important no matter where you are in the world. We need more of that in the world, not less of it. And in this area, you get more of it when it comes to the engagement of the Tulsa Chamber. I think that's part of the success here.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Very good advice, wise words. Folks, if you have any other questions, go ahead and put them in. But otherwise, it looks like we are going to be wrapping up. And I just wanted to say thank you again to our panelists for taking the time today to go over, again, tell these great stories and successes and how they can, we can all learn from them in our own communities.
Hey,
So,
Susan,
again,
hey, Susan, before you wrap, can I ask the chief one question?
Yes, sir.
Chief, what did it feel like when Justin and I called you on a Sunday morning and said, "Hey, Chief, we think we're a finalist for a $4 or $5 billion Tesla manufacturing facility. We need you and the other two chiefs on a call in 4 or 5 hours, and we need to try to get a collaborative business and state and tribal strategy." What did that feel like to you, and how do you feel now? The fact that we were the bridesmaid, we ended up being the runner-up on that project, but now we're a semi-finalist or a finalist on several other potential large electric vehicle manufacturing facilities. What is that whole process like to you?
Well, first of all, I'd only been chief probably a year and a half at that point, and that's the morning when I realized I was in the big league when I get a call that's on that level. I mean, it did feel, sort of an awesome experience is how I would describe it personally. But the other thing it did is it opened my eyes even more to the possibilities. I mean, these projects we've talked about have all been huge. They've all been game changers and impactful for generations, in generational terms. But the fact that Tulsa was in the running for that sort of investment that is not just generational, but is of just global significance, told me that win, lose, or draw on that deal, we're all in the big leagues here, and we all have an opportunity. We're going to win some of these in the future. The fact that we got to that point, and the fact that Cherokee Nation could be a part of that, tells me that things are going in the right direction here in this part of the world, and thanks in no small part to the Tulsa Chamber, and I'm glad we can be a part of it.
thank you so much to all three of you, Justin, Mike, Chief Hoskin, for being with us. Thank you to all of you for sharing this time this afternoon. I will have this recording up shortly, and I look forward to sharing information more. Wishing everyone a wonderful afternoon. Congratulations on all your successes. Congratulations, Tulsa Chamber, on your Chamber of the Year win, and Chief Hoskin, again, such an honor to have you with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Chief.
Bye-bye.